Hey, what's going on, everybody? Chris Meaney. Welcome into another edition of Mean Streets powered by FTN. Thanks as always for taking the time to hang out. Continuing here, the MLB team previews. I got our lead analyst over at FTN Daily and FTNBets.com covering a lot of sports for us over at FTN. It is Kyle Murray. Give him a follow at Mlb Dfs. Kyle, what's up, man? Thanks for joining me. We're going to preview what I think is one of the most exciting teams in baseball, the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, my home team's rival. So excited to break down that. But yeah, it's good, and I'm glad to be back on Mean Streets. I think it's my second time on. We did an NFL show a while back, so pumped to do some baseball. I can't wait for the MLB season. Hopefully, obviously we have the longer season, so that's good, and hopefully this one goes off without any hitches.
Yeah, I hope so too. So if you're just new joining us, as always, please rate, review, subscribe. We appreciate that here. Free MLB team previews. We've done a few of them so far. We've hit up the Yankees and the Braves and the Dodgers and the Astros. We're going to talk about the White Sox, but first I wanted to plug just our MLB DFS package, which includes a whole lot. It's great. As Kyle said, we're amped for a 162 game season, hopefully live streams, podcasts, articles, cheat sheets, MLB tools, premium chat, and a brand new MLB optimizer as well. $24.99. You may have missed out on the early package. Maybe there's another one. I don't know. I don't think. We'll have to tug Kevin's arm for that, but $49.99 per month. It really is worth the price, man, when you look at all of the things here that is included, Kyle, in the package, including the MLB optimizer.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times you look across the industry, a lot of times the optimizer alone is going to be that kind of price point. So in my opinion, it's a really good deal to get that included with all of our content, all of our tools, all of our data and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm really pumped about it. They actually allow me to put my 2 cents into the optimizer. So I've gotten to, I didn't really do anything manually, but I got to throw in a couple ideas and suggestions for what I would like to see an optimizer. And a lot of that came from what I heard from subs throughout the course of the first three MLB, NFL, and NBA seasons. So took a lot of your input and sent it over to the tech team. So hopefully we get a lot of good changes to what they already had as a bare bones opto. I'm really pumped about it. For me, it's something that I've been playing around with a lot over the course of the NBA season and a little bit of spring training, just a little bit of spring training, but a lot of NBA, and I like it a lot. So I'm really pumped about that. But the cool thing for me is my projections and player rater are going to be displayed and inputted into those every single day, as well as the ownership. So all that's going to be in there, as well as our exposure. So we do the cheat sheets now where everyone goes in and they put in their exposures for the day. We're going to have those built into the optimizer directly as well. So pretty much everything outside of like the written content, a lot of the stuff, a lot of the tools and stuff like that, it's going to be right in that optimizer, and it's all free with the package. So I'm really pumped about it.
Oh, baby. Yeah, you put in a lot of work. I've seen some sneak peeks. It looks fantastic. And if you've been following along with Kyle and myself and Stefano over FTNDaily.com talking about some NBA, your player rater there is phenomenal too. So good stuff. We're excited here. We're just a couple weeks from first pitch in MLB. If you're looking to get involved with some best ball drafts, Underdog Fantasy is the place to check out as well. Use that promo code FTN. I know Big John has been doing a lot of hard work just helping people get set up for the drafts. He's got a cheat sheet there. He's got rankings and projections. So use the promo code FTN. Underdog will honor a money back guarantee, and it is a phenomenal, slick site. No trades, no setting your lineup, just simple, fun draft. Watch the team pile up all the points, and they have two tournaments currently live, 25K and 50K as well. And when the season gets underway, they're going to have some pick'ems, over-unders just launched. They have rivals. You choose a player you think will score higher versus another player in a stat category on any given day. So lots of cool stuff happening with baseball season just around the corner. So let's get into the White Sox. I'll get your thoughts on Detroit throughout. Maybe I was looking at White Sox statistics against lefties, and the Tigers just really stood out as well. And I remember doing MLB DFS shows with you and thinking, wow, this Detroit team, they can hit lefties. So they may pop up here throughout, and we'll get your thoughts on the way out on the Tigers, because they do have some young and promising players, I think, coming up through their system. So the White Sox, again, fun team last season, 35-25. They lost 8 of their last 10, Kyle, at the end of the season, which hurt their chances, I think, to win the division. I mean, they only came one game back from winning the division, and then they just limped into the postseason too. They lost the 2 of the 3 against Oakland, so they were bounced early in the AL wildcard. But a lot of just young, promising bats on this team. 10-1 to win the World Series using our free prop shop over at ftnbets.com. That's the best I found was 10-1, plus 425 to win the AL pennant, minus 115 to win the AL Central. I don't love to get involved with these division. I mean, it takes forever to get your money back, but that is one that I really like. I like this team quite a bit. And then the win total at 90.5. When you look at this Chicago squad, what do you think? Do you think they have what it takes to win the World Series? Is it just like these kids, once they start to hit their peak, maybe they're just 2 or 3 years away? Like, what's your initial thoughts when you look at this White Sox squad?
Yeah, I mean, they added a few pieces that I think helps them get there. I don't know if they're quite on the cusp of, World Series contender quite yet. I don't think that's necessarily a knock on their team or anything. I think that goes to say just how good some of the other top teams in the MLB truly are. And I don't know if they're quite on that level yet, but still, like you mentioned, this is a team that we were high on last year, high on them again this year. They have a lot of really good young talent, which is always impressive and intriguing. So a lot of attention this team was getting last year, specifically in DFS. This is one of the more popular teams to stack night in and night out. It felt, even when they were going through some injury stuff and some cold streaks, they were popular. People wanted to play one-off Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert and Robert. Is it Robert or Robert? I always get mixed up.
I think it's Robert. Yeah, okay. But I've heard Robert too. But we'll go with Robert.
I've heard both too, and I have a buddy who is a White Sox fan, and he calls him Robert. And then the other day, I heard someone call him Lou Bob, and I don't like that nickname.
Ooh, I don't like that one either.
Yeah, so I'm trying to nail this down here. But they do have a lot of really intriguing young bats here, especially with Robert and Jimenez and Moncada, all under the age of 25. So, I mean, it's going to be a team that's always going to have our attention in the DFS community because we like these young players, and we always will. But I don't quite know if I would be willing to put them up against some of these World Series contenders quite yet.
I agree, actually. Like, they're fun. They're up and coming. Last year, as I think a lot of us over at ftnbets.com hammered their win total. We'd like them as long shots to win the World Series, even though we didn't think as a group that they would. If that doesn't make any sense, like, you could always hedge when you get into the postseason, but they were long shots. I believe I had the mid-season at 30-1 to win the World Series. When the season ended, I thought that they would add, and I took them at 16-1. As I mentioned, they're now 10-1, and they did add. They brought in Lance Lynn, who's got, I think, 3 200-inning seasons on his resume, a 3.5 ERA for his career, so he is strong. They bring in Liam Hendricks, second in saves last season, a 1.66 ERA since the start of 2019, leads all closers, like qualified closers, and it's not even close. Like, he has been lights out for the A's over the past couple of years. So they did add, you bring in a veteran bat, Adam Eaton, who they had before. So a lefty bat who can give them a little bit of balance to up and down their lineup. And the only reason that, Robert is sticking into me, and I watched a lot of White Sox games last year, but, Hawk Harrelson, who doesn't call the games anymore, he wouldn't stop talking about Robert over the past, couple of years before he was even close to making the bigs and how excited he was. And then he just went and retired, so he can't even call the games anymore. But he is, an entertaining broadcaster, to say the least. But, yeah, up and down this lineup, Kyle, again, the bets, smashing them in DFS anytime a lefty was on the hill. The 3.5 team implied totals was one of my favorite bets to make every single time that they were playing. But overall, their numbers, 96 homers, third in baseball, 306 runs, fifth, ISO fifth, average sixth, slugging fifth, WRC plus fifth, WOBA eighth. Against lefties, number one average in baseball, 285, fourth in homers, 27, first in ISO, 238, slugging was first, OPS was second, 891, to your White Sox, or your Tigers rather, first. WOBA was second, and the Tigers were first there as well. WRC plus, they were first. So lots of talent. I'm looking at the props here, and I'm wondering if there's anything. Eloy is 30-1 MVP. Abreu won the MVP last year, 30-1. I don't think he does it again. 30-1, both of those guys. Robert, 25-1 MVP. And then the home run props, 35-1 Abreu, 18-1 Eloy, and for Robert, 50-1. So I thought that was interesting. Like, he's 25-1 to win the MVP, but he's 50-1 to lead in home runs. I think he would have to flirt with leading in home runs if he's going to have any MVP votes. Kyle, would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. And it's actually, for me, it's kind of crazy that Jose Abreu even won the MVP last year. I know he had a great year, but obviously, you got Trout in that division, or in that league as well. So it's kind of, I know he was banged up a lot last year, but when you see a guy like Jose Abreu getting the MVP, it's a little surprising, right? And like you mentioned, 30-1. Don't really feel great about him going back to back, but I assume he would probably be the most likely in my opinion. But like you mentioned, the whole home runs and MVP correlating there would make some sense. But I don't know if I love any of those bets there. I think betting on the division or the pennant winners would probably be the best guess for me here out of the White Sox.
So if you're doing season-long drafts, and I've been looking at ADPs at NFBC over the past 4 weeks, and there's a lot of, Lucas Giolito is ADP 18. He's a borderline top 5 pitcher going in drafts. Eloy has an ADP of 36, Robert 35, Abreu 38, Anderson 41. So there's already like 5 White Sox going inside the first 40 picks, and Lance, Lynn, Hendricks, these guys are going inside the top 60. So all these guys are going to kind of fly off the board early. Who's the most appealing to you? And it doesn't even have to be any of those top 5. Like, who's the most appealing White Sox in this lineup that you'll probably have a lot of exposure in DFS and maybe a target of yours, in season-long leagues?
Yeah, naturally for me, it's Moncada. Are you talking hitters or just out of the rotation?
Yeah, hitters is fine.
Yeah.
And yeah, Moncada is a guy who didn't even bring
Yeah.
up because he's so much value for this guy.
Right. And for me, a big thing is he's been taking a step in terms of hitting lefties a bit better over the course of the last 2 years. I know his first 2 seasons in the majors, it was pretty brutal in terms of how he was able to produce against lefties. Typically not what you want out of a switch hitter. You want kind of equal production. Obviously, most of the time, those guys are going to have some kind of statistical bias towards one way or the other, but slight improvements there against lefties. And he's just a guy that he's going to typically hit in the middle of this order. And even if he's like hitting 5th or 6th, that's a good chance to potentially have that RBI count looking pretty solid. So, obviously Jose Abreu is going to be one of the, the fan favorites here with how good he's been. Eloy is going to be a solid pick as well. But Moncada down there, in my opinion, I think that'd be a pretty solid value as well. But I also have interest in Giolito pretty much every time he's on the bump in DFS. So I assume that's going to translate most of the time to season-long drafts. He's just a guy who I think when we think Giolito, we think of one of the better comeback stories of DFS guys. Like, this is one of the guys that we were like, oh, this guy sucks, we're going to target him. And then one year he was Cy Young caliber type talent. So he's an incredible pitcher, and the turnaround that he made in his career is definitely awesome. And he's going to be the workhorse here. I know Lance Lynn's going to be up there in terms of innings pitched, but Giolito's going to be the ace here. And I think when you look at the teams in this division, the Tigers, the Indians, they lost a pretty good chunk of their talent as well. The Twins, they're going to have a solid team year in and year out with that kind of core. But this could be a division that there's some strikeouts to be had here, especially with the Tigers. So I think Giolito and Moncada would probably be the 2 highlights for me.
Yeah, I agree. And, obviously a lot of the games came inside the division last season, but I look at the game log here, and Detroit 13K in one outing, at Cleveland 11K, Cleveland again 9K. Like, he had his way inside the division. What do you think about 500 to 1 to win the Cy Young?
Yeah, I like that. I was going to bring him up as 40 plus 450 over on DraftKings, which I thought was pretty interesting as well. So you have it at better odds, but yeah, I think that's a pretty interesting number for sure. When you look at the rest of the names in this list, you have Cole, you have Bieber, which are his 2 serious competitors there, and that's obviously tough competition. Yeah. You also have Glasnow, but after that, you have teammate Lance Lynn, you have Ryu down there, you have Barrios. The competition's not really too deep after Cole and Bieber. I really think he can stand out amongst that group. Obviously, you have to get past Cole and Bieber, which is a tough task. But if he's able to really put up big numbers, especially with the win total in that division, where I think this team could be one of the more prominent teams in the division, plus 450, or you have it plus 500, I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's easier to maybe call an AL Cy Young than it is NL, to your point about the competition. Like, you go to the NL and you got DeGrom and Bauer and Scherzer and Buehler and Darvish and Nola, Snell. Like, there's just a number of pitchers that you could make cases for in the NL, but in the AL, I totally agree. Like, Hyun-Jin Ryu, I like him, but he's got the 5th best odds in the AL to win the Cy Young. I mean, I'm not totally there when it comes to him. Yeah, Moncada's interesting. I think last year, shortened season, only played 52 games, 231 plate appearances, dealt with COVID, talked about how the struggles that he had, put on a little bit of weight. The strikeout rate was back up to 30%. But I look at that 2019 season and I see a guy who cut his strikeout rate down from 33 to 27. The average, he was 315. He had a high BABIP. Maybe he's not going to have a 300 average. You know, a lot of projections have him for 250. I think he could get to 260, 270. I think he is that good of a hitter. But 25 bombs in 2019 and 10 stolen bases and 12 the year before that. So looking at last season and seeing 0, I think that is the outlier. I think this is a guy who can flirt with 10 stolen bases. And I think he is like ADP right now is 83. There's a wide range of outcomes, like the min pick NFBC Kyle is 52 and then 119. So it's like a lot of people seem to be maybe just, all in for their guy and Moncada and the bounce back. And I think that's where I would go. And then some people are willing to maybe pass on him. And then it kind of creates a little bit of value going outside the top 100 picks. If you had a shot in a vacuum, 2 guys, Eloy or Robert, who would you pick? One of the 2.
Did you mention the ADP on those? Is this for just overall?
Yeah, just overall. Like, say they were the same price.
Yeah,
I know it's so tough. They're both studs. I think they're both great. I tell you who I lean with, Eloy for me. I think he's got slightly more power right now and can potentially come with a better average. But Fangraphs has a lot of these guys like Robert for 30 homers, Eloy for 39, Abreu for 33, Anderson for 24, Grandal for 25, and then Moncada for 24. So it's like a lot of guys are just going to mash. But like, is it Eloy over Robert or what? Like, what do you think? I know we're splitting hairs here, but
yeah, it's really close. I think I would actually go Robert just because of the stolen base upside. Like, he had 9 last year, obviously in a shortened year. I think he has a real chance to flirt with 30. So Robert, I mean, he's not going to have the quite the power production that Eloy's typically going to have, but he did have 11 homers in 202 at bats last year, 56 games. So I think I'd probably lean him. And I also think he has a chance to really take a step up. Like, we kind of saw Eloy take a step up last year. I think he has a chance, if he can get that average up a bit, then he starts hitting for a little bit more power still, and those bases kind of turns into a extremely well-rounded player. Like, if you ask a diehard White Sox fan who's the closest comparison to Mike Trout, they're going to say Robert. I don't really know if we can agree with that, but he still has, like, 5-tool type talent. And I think I would lean slightly Robert just because, in my opinion, he has the potential to kind of either match or at least come close to Jimenez with the power and, the average. But the stolen base upside is what I really like, especially for fantasy.
Yeah, I think you're dead on, actually. Yeah, he could have a 30-30 season and say he finishes with 10 fewer home runs and the batting average is not as nice, but stolen bases are so hard to come by that, it is pretty interesting to get a guy, or intriguing rather, to get a guy who can give you a 30-30. It's rare. You don't see a lot of that in baseball anymore. And that's why I think, Acuna is a stud, obviously, but that's why I think more people are willing to go with Acuna as opposed to maybe a Mike Trout. And Juan Soto will give you a little bit of sneaky stolen base there as well. If there's a hole on this team, it's probably pitching, right? After Lynn and Giolito, like Dallas Keuchel, I don't know. He keeps the ball on the ground. He can give you some innings. He's not going to strike out a whole lot, but Dylan Cease, Carlos Rodon, is there any of these guys that you're excited for and that you think could be potential late round flyers in season long leagues, or somebody that maybe will, down the road we'll be looking at in DFS?
Yeah, I mean, I think the guy for me down the road is Michael Kopech. I've seen him make some headlines in spring training, getting back on the mound. He obviously dealt with the arm injury and then some mental stuff. So it looks like he's at least making his way back to a spot where he can be on the path to getting back. I'm looking at the depth chart on the White Sox website, and they have him listed as their long reliever right now in the bullpen. So if he's going to make the opening day roster as a long reliever, I assume it would be a matter of time before he's overpassing Cease and Rodon for that either 4th or 5th spot in the starting rotation. So I would think Kopeck would be very interesting. I'm not sure where he's going in season-long drafts, but he's a guy who, when he was first making his way up to the majors, all the hype in the world around him, right? And for good reason. So if he's able to really come back from that injury, which we've seen a lot of guys come back from injuries now more than ever with all the medical advancements and all that stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back even better, or at least kind of to where he was. So I would say Kopeck, but I agree the weakness here is with the pitching. I am a Keuchel fan, but he's not really an exciting guy, especially for fantasy. Like, he's in my opinion, a more of a real life pitcher than a guy you really like for fantasy. Going to get ground balls, pitch his way out of innings, not really strike out a ton of guys. I think he can be a fine, bottom half of the rotation guy, but not really a guy I'm ever loving for DFS or for fantasy. But I wish that the GM here could have made some kind of magic work and kept Dunning. I know they gave up Dunning in the
Yes.
trade for Lance Lynn, but if they could have somehow pulled the strings
I
to
like
keep
him.
Dunning and still get Lynn, then they get Kopeck back, so they would have Giolito, Lynn, Kopeck, Dunning, and then Keuchel. That would have been just impressive. Obviously, it didn't happen, so it's kind of working on the theoretical there, but just something that I kind of thought of as we were going. But I like Kopeck. I think I guess more research should be done on if he has any chance to kind of make his way into the rotation, but just based on the kind of talent and the kind of potential they kind of seen in him over the past few years, I would assume he has a chance to do that, and that would be interesting for me.
Yeah, I agree. A great call. His ADP is real late. I took him in the Great Baseball Invitational, 330. So he's just a flyer, but with some upside and the wide range of outcomes again with him. Min pick 164 NFBC and 492, which I think is an absolute steal. Yeah, I mean, he's got the pedigree, right? He's a former first round pick in the Red Sox organization, flipped in the deal. But yeah, in the Chris Sale deal, I believe. But yeah, the last time we saw him, 2018, was very small, but he kept the walks down, which I thought was very encouraging because he walked a lot of guys in the minors. And we talked about this with David Jones and Ian Anderson and the Red Sox and just these young pitchers. That's what they kind of need to figure out, is just the command. But it's definitely there, like the stuff potential. I think he gets inside the rotation. I see as well, like a long reliever, but Fangraphs has it projected for 84 innings, which is not, I don't know, it's a little low. It doesn't really show or tell us that he's going to get starts inside the rotation, but I think Cease is safe, but Rodon I don't think is. Like, he has had opportunities to put it together. He's had some injuries. He showed some flashes as well, but he hasn't really put it all together. I was looking at potential sleepers. There's some buzz here with Andrew Vaughn, White Sox first round pick in 2019, third overall, potential maybe DH. Now, he hasn't had really any time in the minors, like single A ball. That's it. Like, he hasn't had double A, triple A, but Fangraphs has him projected, across all the projections here, ATC, Steamers, Zips, wherever you look. Zips has him for 540 plate appearances, 13 bombs. He could be a potential late round sleeper. I'm sure in dynasty leagues, keeper leagues, he's probably a target. Maybe he was drafted last year in your formats, but I think, he could potentially make some noise too. It's just another bat that they can put inside the lineup, Kyle, that we may be talking about in DFS. Is there anybody that we haven't mentioned here that piques your interest, or maybe not? Maybe you think that they're busts.
Yeah, I mean, I think Madrigal is also someone that piques my interest, just because I assume he's going to be a guy that's going to play very often. I assume he's going to be in there as their starting second baseman, but I also think they could move him around and get him a lot of plate appearances. So if he's going late in your drafts, I don't hate taking a shot on the guy who you think might, he might not be the most exciting player, but he's going to be in one of the more talented offensive lineups. Like, we've seen plenty of times where guys who don't really have a lot of buzz around just get there because they're on a really good team. Maybe they're getting on base a few times and they're scoring and maybe stealing some bases. So I see Madrigal. A lot of sites have him projected for double-digit stolen bases. So if he's going to be up there, he's someone that kind of pops a bit. Vaughn, when I first thought about him, he kind of seems like to be a guy that could potentially come up later after they get that the whole service time deal where they wait on the guy so they don't lose a service year or whatever. So maybe he's up in a couple of weeks. He actually has decent rookie of the year odds at plus 1,500. Madrigal's at plus 1,800.
I like that.
And then Kopeck, DraftKings actually has Kopeck listed at plus 2,500. So looks like they might be on board with him potentially making his way into the starting lineup. I don't think a long reliever really would make his way onto the odds board of rookie of the year.
Injuries they're going to happen, right? Things are going to happen. So if he finds his way inside the rotation, I like that 25-1, not bad. Madrigal, I saw that 18-1 is certainly interesting as well. And then we can make the transition. Your boy Casey Mize, 15-1. What do you think about the Tigers this season?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know. I'm not too high on them this season, but they're pitching. Like, you see Mize up there, but also you see Matt Manning, who's plus 3,000 over on DraftKings as well. So that's another young pitcher for the Tigers. I mean, they have so many young guys in their farm system in terms of pitchers that if 3 or 4 of these guys end up being cut out to what they're supposed to be, they have a really good upside to have one of those top rotations in terms of young talent, and they have a lot of young hitters. Obviously, Torkelson, who they drafted with the #1 overall pick last year. They have Riley Green, who I believe was the 5th overall pick, either the 3rd or the 5th. Blanking on the number, but he's supposed to be a top prospect as well, lefty with a lot of power. So they have a lot of really good young guys. It's just the matter of if they end up being what they're supposed to be or not. But they have actually gotten a couple sneaky pickups. They did lose CJ Cron, who was one of their better hitters against lefties last year, which you were commenting on how good they were against lefties. They lost him. He gets to go potentially play in Coors if he makes the big league roster. I think they signed him to a minor league deal, which is weird. I feel like Cron is definitely good enough to get his own big league deal. But they got Renato Nunez and they got Nomar Mazara, 2 pickups that I really like. Mazara's 25. I didn't know that until the Tigers signed him. He feels like he's a bit older because he's been in the bigs for 4 years since he was 21, but he's only 25. So I really like that pickup. I like Nunez, who was crushing in Camden, but I actually looked into his numbers, and over the course of his career as an Oriole, he actually has more home runs on the road than he does at home. So maybe he wasn't being a fluke play or a fluke performance based on where he was playing in Camden. So, I mean, I'm not too high on them this year. I don't think anyone really should be. I think they potentially find their way out of being a top pick, but nothing too far past that. Not really. For me, it depends on how these young guys pan out.
It seems like they're heading in the right direction, though. I love the Nunez call. He's a great sleeper. He's another guy who's, just not even really getting drafted in your standard 12-team leagues, but in NFBC, I think he's a strong target as somebody who can get 20 home runs at least. And, Jonathan Scope, I've always liked Scope because the second base position is so weak, right? It's just you get him super late. You know what you're going to get with him. He's got some pop in his bat. He was strong last year at moments as well. 20+ homers, I think, is something that we can bank on with him. And you know what? I like Spencer Turnbull as a pitcher too. I've had some shares of him over the past couple of years. There's been some inconsistency, sure, in his game, but I think he's got a little bit of upside there. And, Fangraphs has him for 134 strikeouts, 142 innings. I don't know. I think he could top that. I think he can get to, 150K or something. And then Matthew Boyd's got some upside, but it was a rough year for him last year, right? He couldn't really put it all together. I thought that maybe they would flip him, but I guess there was no takers.
Yeah, I think he got banged up a little bit around the deadline last year, but the year before that, they were supposedly getting some pretty big offers from guys like the Astros and stuff like that. So I think they got him back on a 1-year deal to avoid arbitration or something like that. So I think I would assume their end goal is to trade him. He's a little bit older, and they are kind of trending towards a younger rotation with guys like Mize, Skubal, Manning. I will say one thing about these kind of on the fence type players like Turnbull, who I actually like as a pitcher. Again, I don't know if he's like a super exciting guy, but also Michael Fulmer. Like Michael Fulmer was once a top prospect as well.
Yeah.
They got a lot of guys there. Like they have Jose Urania, they have Julio Teheran as well. If these guys slip up a bit, they could easily find their way either in the bullpen or gone. So that's one thing to be careful about with the Tigers. I think their rotation, they have a lot of potential guys. Like I'm seeing 6 guys on their active roster right now in terms of guys who could potentially be starters. But then you have Teheran, who's on the 40-man roster. Then you have all these young guys as well. So that's just one thing to note about the Tigers. And then the last guy I want to touch on is Nico Goodrum. Like it looks like he's going to be out of the starting rotation or out of the starting lineup most nights, which is weird to see. This is one of my favorite guys to roster in DFS over the course of the last 2 years. He was one of my my favorite Tigers, and he's gone now. Apparently, he's going to be on the bench.
Why do you think that is? There's another guy who was a big part of the lefty success, right? And I think he hit 330 against lefties last year. He can give you double-digit homers, double-digit stolen bases. Why is he finding a way outside the lineup?
It's Willie Castro. Willie Castro is a guy who the Tigers are very high on. He wasn't really necessarily drafted as a top guy or anything like that, but he really showed his way to be a top prospect. He's 23. He's a switch hitter, very similar to Goodrum in terms of the kind of skills that he brings. And he's going to be their starting shortstop, probably bat towards the top of the order. So Willie Castro is also a guy that I guess we can touch on as an interesting option as well. But they just have, again, so many young guys. They have Scope, who's worth a little bit more money, so they're going to find a way to play him most nights. They have Candelario, who they were basically moving him back between the minors and the big leagues because he was playing so poorly with it at the end of last year. He really got going again. So a lot of these young guys who they at least want to give a shot to, Paredes as well, who they got in the Avila trade a couple years ago, a top player in the Cubs organization. He's going to start probably at third. So a lot of young guys that just kind of are filling the holes, and Goodrum is going to be more of a utility guy, I would expect.
growing pains for you, man, to watch the Tigers team, but I can hear this excitement in your voice. It's nice, right? I mean, I've had some teams who have went through this as well, and it's nice to see some progress and to have some of these kids get in the lineup. So it is, as much as, they're probably not going to be a competitive team, but it will be nice to see some of these young players and see what they have. And for Scope, 372. The ADP NFBC.
Oh, wow.
Min pick 109. So there's somebody out there that really likes them, and the max is 474. I took him here 287. So I mean, I like him as well. It's just if I'm not going to get the early second baseman, I'm probably waiting it out of the position. I think he's fine. He's serviceable. He's not going to kill you. He's not going to get you any stolen bases, but he can give you some pop, and the average could be decent as well. Kyle, you're a stud, bud. I always say that, but really you cover a lot of sports for us. You're doing some great work over at FTN. Make sure you give Kyle a follow, Mlb Dfs, and that Mlb Dfs package. It's going to be totally worth it. We're going to have a lot of fun. The Discord chat is always lit. I got the brand new MLB Optimizer, $249, but $49.99 per month if you want to give it a try and check it out. Going to have the cheat sheets and the exposures and Kyle's player rater in there as well. Thanks for taking the time, Kyle, and thanks for taking the time for everybody out there. We're going to continue the MLB team previews. Please rate, review, subscribe. If you want to try out Underdog, use that promo code FTN. Big John has been doing some work. Check him out as well at MLB Moving Average. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.